Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Tweedl podcast. We are once again at EJ Churchills, joined by my very good friend and co-host, Rob Fenwick.
Hello, everyone.
And I have stolen him for half an hour on probably one of the busiest days of his year, where there's 160 people or so here for the VIP day at Churchills. And every single person wants to speak to this man, but I've stolen him for a podcast.
Yeah, thanks for that. So it's just perfect. Yeah.
So,
bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry I haven't got to see you all.
So if you see people leaving in the background, that's because they're all trying to find Rob to say goodbye and thank him. But
however, the good news about that is we have managed to steal one person who's a dear friend, dear supporter of us, and a great guy.
Yeah.
So we managed to steal him for just half an hour.
Yeah.
Before he goes and collects some goats.
Correct, I know. What a curveball that is. And we're joined by TV royalty, actually. We're not very professional normally.
Steady on.
We've had to move the plastic cups off the table and all sorts.
He's told us how to sit. Yeah. I feel really nervous.
Welcoming to the podcast, everybody, Mr. Adam Henson.
Hello, lovely to be here. And thank you for an amazing day today, Rob. It has been quite extraordinary. Amazing clay shooting, quite remarkable lunch, and lots of lovely people. Surprisingly, a lot of them seem to really like you.
I know, it's amazing. I only invited my 155 friends, okay? You were 56 and you were 57, okay? It's as simple as that.
Genuinely, they do speak very highly of you and your business. I'm not nice to you very often.
I know you're not. No.
But there was a lot of very good positive things about you and EJ Churchill, so congratulations.
Well, I have a very good team. That's basically what's happened.
It's been fantastic, and the food especially, unbelievable.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, to cater for that
It
many
really
people
is.
at that standard
He's
was very
so
nice.
professional, though. Have you noticed?
Yes.
He's like perfectly scripted.
Just
did his hair
absolutely
beforehand.
clicked.
Charlie did his makeup.
Yeah,
it's all perfect.
Forgot to have a shave. And the sun is shining as well.
Gorgeous.
The sun always shines on the righteous.
Yep, we
You
could
just
do with
walk
some-
around with sunshine on you all the time, Rob, don't you?
Well, hang on. Is this abuse from me here? This is not fair. You're getting in there early, aren't you? Tell us, come on, how's farming?
Well, it's been a very difficult 12 to 18 months.
Yep. Harvest done, though?
No, not yet. And that is a struggle. That's one of our major problems. So, farmers are always moaning about the weather, but in the last 12 months, we've got a lot to moan about. It's been raining all through last autumn when you do your autumn planting of your cereal crops, and that's our main business.
Yeah.
Then doing weed control. So that's been difficult because it's been too wet to get on the fields.
Yeah.
And then right through the spring as well. So the crops were quite dirty with weeds and disease, yields not where they ought to be. But then getting in to do the harvest, which needs to be in dry weather, as you know, has been difficult. So we've still got oats to cut at home. This year we decided to grow sunflowers, which are usually grown in France, but we thought 900 foot on top of the Cotswolds, why won't that work? and now we know
surprise,
why.
surprise.
And how tall are they?
And it's been actually
Daffodils.
they've grown amazingly well. They look really beautiful. They're sort of
Dandelions.
6 foot tall. They've got huge heads on them, multiple heads on the plants. And so yield-wise could be quite extraordinary if it would ever stop raining.
Yeah.
No, it's a shocker, isn't it?
Do they not get hammered by crows?
No,
The sunflowers.
They did initially when we planted them, yeah. So we had to put out bird scarers and flags and
Yeah.
those sorts of things. But then they germinated well and grew well. So the warm, wet weather has been fantastic. But what we need now is hot weather to be able to just ripen the seeds and combine them. One of the crops we've been very successful with this year is wildflowers and wild grass seeds that are on an area of the farm that hasn't been very productive, that we sort of turned over to the old set-aside scheme.
This
which
is basically the new set-aside
Well,
scheme,
yeah,
is
so it was the old set-aside originally, and these two fields we graze in the winter with some of our rare breeds, and then wildflowers have grown in them and are beautiful, and so we combined that this year and sold all the seed to a grass and wildflower seed company, and that's probably the most profitable bit of the farm, even though it's the worst bit of the farm agronomically and for the soil.
So you've got three, am I right to say your three interests? So obviously you've got your presenting on Countryfile, you've got your farming, and then you've got your Cotswold Family Park.
Yeah.
Have you
Cotswold Farm, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Cotswold Farm Park. Yeah.
No, I've seen it all over
Oh my
on
God.
YouTube.
I mean, I
and
went
stuff.
with the kids last. It is unbelievable. I mean, I expected a swing and a bouncy castle. I mean, there was thousands of people there, and we stayed there. The cabins are brilliant.
Yeah.
It is a credit to you because
The
you built that.
farmer, actually.
You literally did that from scratch, didn't you?
Yeah, so my dad's brainmave, that was. So he took on the tenancy in the early 60s.
Yeah.
And then in 1971, he decided to open the Cotswold Farm Park really to showcase his large collection of rare farm animals.
Yeah.
So quick history lesson, post-war, starving nation, food rations. agriculture put its foot on the accelerator to feed a starving nation.
Yeah.
We left behind some of our old-fashioned rotational farming systems, but also some of our old-fashioned breeds. So we went for out-and-out production. We went for the black and white dairy cow, milk-producing athlete, continental beef breeds, fast-growing lean pigs. Agriculture changed and did an amazingly efficient job. But in doing that, some of our old breeds became extinct and were falling by the wayside.
Yeah.
Like you might collect stamps or vintage tractors, my dad started collecting those animals. And eventually his business partner said, look, Joe, you've got now 50 different breeds of 7 different species. The reason they're rare is they don't make any money. They're not commercially viable.
No.
So what are we going to do? And Dad said, well, people go to zoos to look at zoo animals. Why don't they come to the farm to look at a farm?
Yeah.
Farm park and to look at farm animals. And so his farming mates thought he was nuts. Locals petitioned against it.
Did they really?
But he forged ahead on the farm tenancy to open. And in the first year, it was 5p for children and 10p for adults to get in. And they sold 20,000 tickets. Now I took on the farm tenancy and have driven it onwards and upwards with my business partner. And we now get 185,000 visitors, and it's a little bit more expensive.
It's
Yeah, I was going to say, how much is it?
15p if you use the code Tweedl Pod. Do you know what I mean? You know.
That's what it costs to go for a
It
week.
is amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
and there's restaurants. I mean, it is and the accommodation's quite new, isn't it?
Yeah, so we've had a sort of campsite for a while. We've
Yeah.
now rebranded it and called the holiday site because, as you know, you stayed in our
Yeah.
lodges. We've got 6 lovely lodges. We've got glamping and camping and shepherd's huts. You can pitch up with your tent or your mobile caravan or camper van. And so that is a site. We have sometimes 350 people on site. And they get into the farm park for free with their camping ticket.
Yeah.
We do evening entertainment and we've got a restaurant and a shop. So lots going on. We have a horse fun ride every month that goes around the farm.
Yeah.
And so that sort of education and tourist side of the business is really important to us. And we're sticking to my dad's legacy of rare breeds conservation. We're very passionate about that, really believe in it. And people said to my dad at the time, why are you keeping these old-fashioned breeds? What's the purpose? And it was because they're part of our living heritage. They're antiques on 4 legs. But he felt that they were a food source and a genetic resource for the future of farming.
Wow.
And now, as we're changing our mindset of agriculture, we're taking our foot off the accelerator. We're thinking more about conservation and the environment, sustainable farming systems. These animals are coming back into their own. And it's great for us to have young people or people of all ages to come and learn about rare breeds conservation, but also to learn about where their food comes from.
Yeah.
They can, in the springtime, watch lambs being born, hold a baby chick, bottle feed a lamb.
Yeah, bottle feed
You know,
them.
all
Our kids
those
did
things,
that.
get
They
up
just
close
did
to
that.
the
It's
animals.
Fantastic, isn't it,
Yeah.
for the general public that aren't having any links to the countryside or farming to see that?
It is, and I think it's about having fun.
And it's properly involved and it's properly fun, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
How many
So-
selfies do you have in a day when you walk around?
I know, I'm
When
gonna-
you go and see him, it's like, Adam.
well, there's lots of people there.
And he's like, ignore, oh, pretty girl. ignore,
It's like-
oh, pretty girl.
It's such a life. That's your walk of life, Rob, isn't it? You know, don't bring me onto your level. So
wanted to
yeah,
get it
You're getting your back now. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's got rare breeds. Can we put Sam in there? Do you know he's a rare breed? Is Sam?
we could, I think. Yes,
Yeah,
I mean,
I'd-
you know,
I'd
we
bring a lot
need
of
some
tourists.
new sort of exhibitions in there. And
Yeah.
you know, you could come along if you're
like
happy
at
to
the
volunteer.
circus, you know, you have to go and meet the weirdo behind the curtain.
It's not that sort of farm park.
Oh, sorry. And then come on, let's talk about Countryfile. So, because you've been involved with that for some time now.
We have, yeah. So 2001 was a horrible time for the British countryside because of foot and mouth.
Yeah.
And
I joined here.
is that the year you
2001,
started at
yeah, foot and
Churchills?
mouth.
I
So
don't
the
even remember
countryside
that.
closed down and people weren't allowed into the countryside. Me and my business partner had decided to invest heavily in the Cotswold Farm Park because our numbers then were about 50,000. We were struggling to make a living from it. And it was either shut it or keep it going. And because my dad was still around and we were, you know, wanting to carry on his legacy, we invested in it and then foot and mouth it. And we were heavily borrowed and it was tough. And so as tenants of the farm, we thought we might lose the farm and our houses and the farm park. And you weren't allowed to have farm sales because people weren't allowed onto farms. Yeah. So that was really difficult. So we literally sat around the kitchen table thinking, what on earth are we going to do? We got through foot and mouth, thankfully, without getting the disease on the farm. We managed to open with, you know, animals that weren't cloven-footed, so sheep and goats and cows.
Yeah.
We had duck dog demonstrations and all sorts of horses and those sorts of things. But then Countryfile did a presenter search, and they were looking for someone from the rural domain who might be a new presenter. My dad had done some telly work way back with Angela Rippon, Phil Drabble, and those sorts of people. Johnny Morris on Animal Magic. You'd be too young to remember, Rob.
Yeah,
but
I remember Phil Drabble.
And so he had done some telly work, and he persuaded me and my wife, who works in television, to apply. I think 3,500 people or something applied. You had to send in an old VHS video. And my wife made a good job of videoing and editing it very professionally.
And you got an interview?
And I got an interview and eventually got the job, yeah.
And before that, you'd never really been on camera?
No, hardly at all. I'd done lots of talking to the public at the... I chatted to the public at the farm park about all our farm and the farm animals and those sorts of things. But interestingly, a story that not many people know, is that it got down to the final 3 and then there was a viewer's vote. And then they rang me to say,
Oh, God, was there?
Yeah, it was like Pop Idol of the countryside, Rob. And then, and then the producers rang me up and said, you've won the competition to have a go at presenting for the day and to meet John Craven.
Yeah.
And I was delighted to meet John Craven, but I thought it was a job. And I said, well, hang on a minute, I thought this was a job. And they said, no, it's a competition. So something had changed. And my dad was a very sound man that I often went to for advice. And I said, look, Dad, they've changed it into a competition and have a go at presenting for the day. I'm not going to bother. I didn't want to do it in the first place. Only you persuaded me. And he said, look, something's happened. We're not that busy. Go along, be a good boy, make the tea, carry the tripod.
Yeah.
You never know, you might enjoy it.
Yeah.
And what had happened is that Ben Fogle had come out of Castaway and had become this sort of famous, good-looking blonde boy. And the London commissioners had said, forget the ginger farmer. Yeah. Ben Fogle's your man. He could be your new presenter. And so
I love it.
But thankfully, they stuck up for me, and I went and did my first day.
They said, you can't be gingerist. We've got to go for him.
Yeah.
That's not his fault.
And diversity came in. That's when it began the English, the language of the BBC. And so now, it was thanks to me.
It was all thanks to you.
And Ben and I worked together side by side for many years on the programme, and there was a stable of presenters. And we were on at lunchtime on a Sunday, and then we moved to prime time on a Sunday night. But they changed the presenter lineup, and the only 2 people they kept were me and John Craven.
Yeah.
And Ben Fogle was moved off the
Pushed
show.
out.
But he
Get
went
out
on
the
to
way, good-looking blonde lad.
Yeah.
Make way.
Yeah, unlucky.
Ginger's rule.
I was going to say Ginger's rule.
He went on
Probably
to
thanks
better
to the
things.
Spice Girls. Wasn't it?
He went on to climb Everest, row the Atlantic, and do all those amazing
so he
things.
failed. and
Yeah,
look at you.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
What a waste of time.
How pathetic.
I bet he's gutted he never stayed on Countryfile.
Yeah, and it's
I'm
the
sure.
best movie ever made.
And do you enjoy it?
I absolutely love it. So there's a really solid, good team.
Yeah.
And I work with people I really trust. They know how to get the best out of me. I work really well with them. We travel around the UK, going onto farms and visiting, farmers or interesting stories, sometimes on the farm at home, which is really good.
Yeah.
And that helps the Cotswold Farm Park when people relate the face to the place. And as a farmer, you drive around the countryside looking over the wall and the hedge, wondering what other farmers are getting up to. I get to go behind the scenes and find out and get paid for the pleasure.
It's very interesting, that.
Because you get a bit of stick for it, don't you, as well, from that sort of... I guess a lot of it's jealousy, but, you also get a bit of stick. And it must be hard because you're trying to come over with a neutral position.
Yeah, it is difficult. And what you have to remember as a presenter is to not be biased about anything.
No.
So within the BBC, you have to be balanced in your viewpoints. You can't campaign for anything particularly.
No.
But also, we're talking to an audience of 3 or 4 million people, some of which are farmers, countryside people, gamekeepers.
Yeah.
Others are living in a flat in Hackney or Coventry or wherever they might be. They could be 8 or they could be 80. And they may have never been onto farms.
Yeah.
So we have to use a language that doesn't insult the expert, but informs the uninformed.
Yeah.
And sometimes the rural and farming community don't understand that, and they get a bit fed up and say, well, why don't you just say it as it is, boy?
Yeah.
And are a bit brash with me sometimes about it. And I try and explain that.
Which I've heard you explain, and you're good at it. I mean, you're very approachable, aren't you? I mean, everybody loves chatting to you, and you love chatting to them, and you're happy to chat with them and tackle it head on.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely.
Because you love your shooting.
Well, I do. I love the countryside. I shoot. I fish. I love wildlife and conservation. I can see how that all works hand in hand.
I've seen Adam shoot. It's very similar to wildlife and conservation. He's definitely
More of a conservationist.
if you see him shoot.
I'm very good on your clays.
Very good.
I eat meat. I love eating game.
Yeah.
And so, I think if you're going to do these things, you need to be able to consume it and understand the countryside. And my dad was a great advocate for the countryside too, and he used to shoot, and I'd go and hold his dog. But we'd talk about the different types of birds, the names of the trees. We'd find an owl pellet on the ground, and we'd take it home and dissolve it and find the mouse's jaw and all those sorts of things. We'd understand the different footprints in the snow, whether it's a fox or a badger or a hare, you know, where a bird had flown down and taken a mouse that would have been a tawny coming into the yard. And so that countryside I understand. But I think there's a lot of people that don't, and I love to talk about it and share it.
You're a good ambassador for us, aren't you?
Well, I don't know whether I can be called an ambassador, but I'm passionate about it, and I love it. And I think education is really important. With the Cotswold Farm Park, we try and make things fun. At school, I wasn't very academic, but I loved the lessons that were good fun with the teacher who told interesting stories and made it a bit of a laugh, and suddenly the information would soak in. And I think that's what it's got to be like. It's got to be light-hearted, but interesting.
And have you ever come across Chris Packham?
I've met him a couple of times, and he's an incredibly intelligent man.
Yeah.
Very vocal, sometimes single-focused. And, you know, there's been a programme about his Asperger's and how his mind works. And I'm not sure he's a great fan of me. Don't think he particularly likes people like me, but I've got nothing against him personally. And I don't think, you know, everybody is entitled...
Well, someone had to say it.
Yeah.
I know, Rob, but
I think
you put him in a right
I know,
spin here.
I know, I love
think
it.
The thing
Sorry,
is,
mate.
and what you have
was a
to
joke.
understand, everybody is entitled to their opinion.
Of course they are.
And what we have to learn to do is to deal with it in a sensible, measured way, and not punch them in the face, Rob. That's not the way.
Really?
And it's not to be belligerent.
But
and
it's so much fun, isn't it? I'm joking. I'm sorry. I'm joking.
What I'm going to do is unmic and walk off.
Yeah.
now.
I'm out of here, Rob. You stitched me up.
And so, Adam, let's change the subject. You, obviously, at Countryfile, you don't really cover field sports as much. You do to a point, but it's very rarely you cover the depths of shooting in the UK. What's your thoughts on it as it is today, the state of shooting in this country?
Yeah, so we did cover it last year.
Yeah, you did.
It was very well received by the farming community or the shooting community. Charlotte Smith went onto a shoot and you know, they covered the whole day and the importance of the beaters and the pickers up and the conservation and all that. So I thought it was a great programme. There was a huge amount of letters, people complaining about it because there's a lot of people that don't like it and don't understand it. And I think if you're an individual... So I took some sheep to a school in North Birmingham a couple of years ago, and I was talking about the provenance of field to fork, you know, people understanding what's on your plate. So secondary school, 1,600 kids in the school, 11-year-old to 18-year-olds, and the headmaster said, I'm bringing extra staff and less children into assembly when you bring the sheep out. And I said, hang on, why? And he said, because there's an awful lot of people that will have never seen a sheep before, and there might be a riot. They might go crazy. And so you've got people in our country, young people, young children, who have never seen a sheep. So for them to understand shooting and
Just impossible.
a normal shoot day is impossible.
Yeah.
And if you go through the process of a shoot day, the build up to it, what's happened behind the scenes, the guns turning up in their +4s and their Range Rovers, getting their guns out, their dogs, having a slurp of slow gin, doing the day, having a lovely social time and doing what they do. That's quite difficult to talk about and to justify to people who have never seen a sheep and many others. And so it's a really tricky, controversial topic and something that I don't particularly raise my head above the parapet and bang on about much. But genuinely, I think there are a lot of shoots across the countryside and a lot of countryside people who are doing amazing work in conservation and wildlife management. And on farms now, we're going into more regenerative, more sustainable farming systems, looking after our soils, our air, our water, our wildlife, and our conservation. And that has to work hand in hand. So farming and conservation has to work side by side. And shooting and the world that brings in the rural domain to the economy and that's managed well is a very good thing. And so I would endorse that.
Yeah.
I think conversely to that, some of the very large shoots and some of the stocking rates of birds that they put into the woods, if that was a free-range chicken system, it wouldn't be allowed because tens of thousands of birds running around in a wood eating everything and turning it into a mud bath is not a good thing. And so as an industry, we've got to manage to self-regulate and do the right thing to be able to convince the government, the public, and the non-supporters that actually, it is a sensible thing to be carrying on with.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, well said. It's just how do we police that as an industry with the demand being there for these estates to be putting out these birds? How? I mean, we're getting deep here into the old...
Well, we are, but you've got your organisations, and there's been a lot of work to try and pull those together and have the equivalent of Red Tractor, an auditing system around the BGA, and the British Game Alliance, is it? That they were trying to do that, and very few shoots were signing up. I don't know why. I'm not into all of that world, and I'm not involved in it, but, you guys are, and I think it's... I think it's the only way forward.
We've got to do something, haven't we? There's no doubt about it. A bit of self-regulation is important. As an industry, we've got to lead the way, haven't we? If we want to secure it for the future.
Absolutely, we have. And the thing, what you do with your business, Rob, is the clay shooting.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of simulated clay days. There's a lot of people I've spoken to today who only clay shoot.
Yeah.
And they come here and they rub shoulders with people who are game shots. Laid on an amazing day, you get these regular customers coming through. So clay shooting is an Olympic sport. So
we had 2 Olympians here today.
And wonderful.
We had Amber Rutter here as well.
Absolutely wonderful.
I didn't get a chance to see any of them shoot, did you?
I got poor Nathan. So Nathan was shooting today, and literally on his first stand, he had about 70 people stood behind him, and they're all going, "Go on, miss, Nathan, miss!" He said, "Bloody hell, this is more nerve-wracking than it was when I was shooting in the Olympics for the gold medal, poor lad." So,
I mean, incredible though, isn't it? Wonderful that it's an Olympic sport, and you've got
lovely
people
to
here
have Amber
today,
here as well,
and great to have ambassadors for Churchills, and you getting them here, which is great. So I think that shooting per se is a really important thing, and it's a sport, and it's great, and shooting sits, game shooting sits alongside that.
And if Adam Henson could have a dream day in the field, what would it be, and where would it be, and what would you be shooting?
That's a really good question, and I think I may have already had it. And so on the anniversary of my father's death, in 2016, I was invited up into Yorkshire to have a day's walked up grouse, and I'd never shot grouse before. And there was a bunch of six or eight of us. I had my Hungarian wirehead Vizsla with me, and we were walking along. She went on point. The keeper put his flag up and whistled. I stepped forward, dog flushed, I shot it, she retrieved it and brought it back to me. It was amazing. So a wild bird in a wild situation that aren't shot, if there's a nut of them,
and cooked
took
them
it home, ate it.
Fantastic.
It was amazing.
Hunter-gatherer.
Like you might catch your first salmon. It was
Really
lovely
special.
because the dog was working. We were out in the wilds. It was a wild bird that are managed to be there.
Yeah.
And if there's not enough, they're not shot, which is sometimes confusing that people are going after grouse shooting to try and stop that. Actually, that should be the last one.
I know, it's bizarre, isn't it?
I
mean, when a conservation side, if you actually look into the depths of grouse shooting, I mean, it's the best we've got.
Indeed.
It's phenomenal.
And
what they do and the work and, as I said, the moorland management is just remarkable what they do. So the fact they're going after it first just seems bizarre, to be honest.
It does. And actually the countryside in those upland areas would be denuded of communities if it was stopped. And we're losing, our village shop and our local pub and the churches and the
Petrol
village halls. It's
stations
all
and
closing down. That rural social structure is collapsing to a certain degree. And that would just help it on its way.
It would. And so on Countryfile, it always looks like everything's perfect, and I'm sure there's lots of fun stories. What's the most embarrassing, or what's the biggest disaster or embarrassing moment on Countryfile? If you've got a good story, you can tell us.
Well, there's been plenty of them, and usually on the farm, there's an animal doing something behind you that it shouldn't be, either going to the toilet in some shape or form, or mating or whatever it might be. But one of the weirdest things I ever had to do was in commercial turkey breeding. They use AI, not artificial intelligence, artificial insemination. Right. And so they have the stags, the males, in a pen, and you have to draw semen from the stags. And so the way they do that is that they catch them, and the stags are ready for this. They're excited by it.
Uh-huh.
You tip them upside down, and you use a straw to suck up the semen that then is collected in a test tube. And thankfully, it drops into the test tube before it goes into your mouth. Good, So it's
like siphoning diesel out of a car.
Yes, similar, except you don't get the mouthful and spit it out first. It just goes into a pot. I just need to make that clear.
Yeah.
It depends how hard you suck.
Oh, you've done it.
Oh, he's done it all right.
Ultimately,
Don't you worry about it.
Adam Henson just admitted to sucking off a turkey.
And so on Countryfile, the presenters always have to have a go. So
brilliant.
I had a go, and then what they do is they mix the sperm in a solution, and then you put that into a hen turkey, and that fertilizes her eggs, and she lays fertile eggs that can then be hatched to produce our Christmas lunch. And so that is the most, gobbling off a turkey is probably the most embarrassing thing.
I love
When
it.
you
That
got
is
in
a
the
great-
car after that, did you think, what is my life?
Yeah.
I did.
You
And
probably got in the car and thought, please, I'm never going to have to share
I hope
that
no one
story
ever-
with any,
Yeah.
especially not two idiots, one from Lancashire,
Yeah.
one from
So
Yorkshire.
that's the trouble with you two. So I've let my guard down
Yeah, you
now.
have.
We're
This
sat
is
on
good.
a nice settee.
This
We're all
is-
having,
and then good food, good
Lured
lunch
him in,
earlier.
we've lured him
it's
in.
being recorded. Oh, no,
God.
that's it.
I
Awful.
love it.
And what's your thoughts on Clarkson's farm, Adam?
Well, I think he's an amazing storyteller, isn't he? And opened up the farming world and agriculture to a massive audience that wouldn't watch Countryfile or many of the other countryside programmes. So he's done an incredible job. The farming community love him. He's won a farming awards for great communication. Caleb is the man. He's the farmer. He's done a lot for young farmers, put money into bursaries and those sorts of things. Financially, they've smashed it. They've probably done in 2 years what I've been trying to do in 20.
Yeah.
If I was going to criticise it in any way, the reason it's funny is because there's all these disasters, but there's a lot of positivity in agriculture. There have been some of your guests today who would be very successful farmers producing root crops in the eastern counties, or poultry farmers who are wealthy and have done well. And if you were thinking, shall I be a dentist or a lawyer or be a farmer, and you watch Clarkson's farm, you think, with all that work and you make diddly squat, I'll be a dentist or a lawyer. Farming's not for me. But actually, it's those bright, business-minded, entrepreneurial type of people we need to join farming. And we need to celebrate a huge amount of success out there because there's some very vibrant, exciting things happening in
It's
agriculture.
quite interesting. I've not thought about it like that.
No, but
Now
I
you've
suppose
said it.
I think you're absolutely right.
for TV they need these disasters.
Well,
and Gerald, who you can't understand, and Caleb bollocking Jeremy all the time. It's TV at the same time, but while showing disasters in farming. But yeah, it's a good way of thinking about it.
It's sort of reality television, isn't it? It's sort of documentary style, but it's scripted, and they're setting things up. And so what? That's great. It makes it funny. And Gerald, I met him a number of times. He can speak perfectly fine. And what they do is they record his voice, and then they lay over another track of voice so that it sounds like it's in a muddle.
You ruined it. That is the
You
great
ruined it.
exclusive.
Yeah, it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
What do all the locals... Are you near his farm?
was
I'm
gonna
about
say-
45 minutes away.
Because the
There's-
locals must be driving and potty,
Well,
aren't
there's
they, with a number of...
queues to get in.
Yeah.
So the Cotswold Farm Park, today, on a day like today, rainy, mid of a miserable day, we might get 400 people. He'll have 1,200 people. His farm shop is a nice little farm shop, but that's pretty much all he's
It's
got.
half the size of this marquee.
Indeed. He's now got a pub, and
Yeah.
there's queues down the road. So I think for the local people, that is frustrating.
I bet it is,
Because
yeah.
he's just
Is it
hammered
driving
the
more
area.
people to Cotswold's Farm Park though?
Interestingly, people come to do the double.
Yeah,
They will
yeah.
come
I bet they
over.
do, yeah.
Quite a lot of Irish families will come over and
Right.
they come to the Cotswolds, which is a beautiful place to visit.
Yeah.
And they'll go and visit him, and then they'll come to us, and they'll realise that the Cotswold Farm Park is a much better day out.
Yes. Yes. Well, it is. We went
With rare breeds.
We went to stay with Adam and at the farm park, and
We went. Jane said, come on, we'll go over to the farm shop. We got there. The queue was, I promise,
600 yards long.
What, diddly squat?
Diddly squat farm shop. And I
I said to Jane, I
I
said,
don't believe you stood in that queue.
did I? Sorry, I nearly swore. Did I
tell us. I mean, we got out the car, which you couldn't park anywhere. They're all on the verges. You couldn't get in. Jane had a picture under the sign, Diddly Squat Farm Shop or whatever it was. I said to Jane, right, come on, we are off. There is no way I'm queuing 600
No.
yards.
just to go into a wretched farm shop. And that was our experience, and that was it back.
Incredible.
But I mean,
But, it just shows the power of the media.
God,
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And, what people can use as a an influence to the viewer, but also politically. So, he's got a lot of strength, that man.
Unbelievable. And he's done great.
We'd love to get him on here at some point.
Oh, it'd be amazing. Have you ever shot with it?
No.
No. He shoots quite a lot, I believe, Jeremy. Yeah.
We caught him years ago.
On our drive here at the shooting ground, in a chopped off car.
They were filming Top Gear. They'd just come along the end of the drive and thought, oh, this looks like a good place.
And they were whizzing up and down. Do you remember when they chopped the cars in half and drove them with the front wheels, dragging them up?
That was on our drive.
No facility fee for you.
Nothing.
I drove down the drive. I saw these flipping idiots.
I pulled up. I said,
excuse my friend. I went,
what the fuck is going on here? Because they were damaging the road because they were
just dragging the things. And it was that idiot in one car and Richard Hammond in another. Anyway, so I said to him, absolutely not. Who do you think you are? Piss off, basically. Do you know what I mean? And they, anyway, they stopped filming and that was it. But it just shows the sort of... I was amazed they would even have a go and do that.
If we had the podcast,
I know, I could have said, now penalties, you have to come and speak to Sam and I.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, Adam, that's fantastic. Now, look, I'm very conscious that you've got to go and pick up goats. And so
we could sit here and talk for ages.
I know. It feels
Can we get you on another time when we've got a bit more time?
Love to do it.
Part 2 is needed because it feels a shame to rush this one.
It does feel shame.
Especially for 4 goats. I mean, come on. You sat with 4 goats.
Yeah, if it was 4 turkeys, I could understand why you were rushing off. You know what I mean? But no.
Let me just end on a slightly serious note, because I have a podcast series called Keeping on Track.
Yeah.
And so we did 15 last year and we did another 10 this year. And mental health and suicide in the agricultural domain is really bad.
Yeah.
The equivalent of one a week. Yeah. And I understand it's bad in gamekeepers and those sorts of people as well. And so we all need to have a bit of lightheartedness and a bit of banter like this and to have conversations and to talk to one another. And so if people want to listen to that, go to Keeping on Track.
Yeah, good idea.
It's free on all of your usual podcast platforms. And the one message that came out about it was opening up and talking and being honest to one another. And an interesting thing I learned was when you're with a mate or a work colleague or whatever, you say to them, how are you? And I'm fine, I'm great. Yeah. And actually after that, say, out of 10, how are you out of 10? And then you actually have to reflect and think, how am I out of 10? I'm 6 today. And then that opens up the conversation. Why are you only 6? And then you start to talk. And apparently those initial discussions can then open up and you can help resolve some of the problems.
Yeah. It's actually something we should get involved with, isn't it, as well?
Yeah. So, I run the Young Farmers AGM in Blackpool with a couple of friends of mine. And we're trying to build an initiative to do with mental health for this year's or next year's coming up AGM, and we ought to do something.
Sure, absolutely.
Tom Pemberton and Ollie Harris and Ollie Bloggs, you know them both.
I know them both well, and Ollie's done an amazing job.
Answers a percent, didn't he? Similar thing, but it's very important, and we should talk about it more, especially in gamekeepers and whatnot.
Indeed, and we interviewed Ollie on the podcast series, and so we got testimonials from people who'd suffered and then recovered. Medical experts, farmers, university lecturers, those sorts of people. It's quite powerful and worth a listen.
Good for you.
Perfect.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. Well, thank you very much for giving us half an hour.
And make sure when you film the next podcast of yours, you plug the Tweedle Pod.
Of course I will. Not a problem. The thing is, what I don't really want is many people listening to it and hearing about my turkey experience.
The good news is only 4 people listen to our podcast, so don't worry. That's my mum, my dad, his mum, his dad.
But it's going to put a smile on the face regardless.
Yeah,
so that's the main thing.
Mate, thanks for being such a good sport. Thank you for everything you do for us, the countryside and all that. I think you're an absolute star and you're a dear friend. So
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
What a mate.
Adam, thanks for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. We will be back with more episodes very, very soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I would say new episodes every Sunday. We're trying.
No. You have been
I'm not looking at you. I'm not looking at you.
And do nothing but go on holiday.
For once, it's our problem, mine and Charlie's.
Yeah.
But no, we're back on track. Thanks, Adam. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you.